There's a report that come out of the Democratic Republic of the Congo. Now, we know that the resources in many African nations is running the world, but yet the African people do not benefit from these resources. Now, CBS is going to do an investigative report on the child exploitation when it comes to getting the cobalt, but it's bad. Not saying it's not, but I really want you to look deeper into what they're saying. Pay attention to the images they're showing. Pay attention to who's going to be really blamed and who's really benefiting off of this. And you're going to see something that probably I'll solve. Let's roll that clip.
They're digging in trenches and laboring in lakes, hunting for treasure in a playground from hell. Hard enough for an adult man, unthinkable for a child. And yet tens of thousands of Congolese kids are involved in every stage of mining for cobalt. More than half the world's supply comes from the DRC. 20% of that is mined by hand. We traveled along collapsing dirt roads. Children are everywhere, digging for cobalt in abandoned open pit mines. And it's clear security officials in charge here, only some of them in uniform, have something to hide.
There's such sensitivity around cobalt mining that every few hundred feet we get stopped requesting letters, documents, even though we have official permission to be here.
But for the Chinese middlemen we saw who buy the cobalt, there are no such constraints. They have free access to the mines. Inside, women and children are doing so-called artisanal mining. But don't be fooled. This is no quaint cottage industry. At barely 10 years old, children lug heavy sacks of cobalt to be washed in rivers. From as early as 4, they can pick it out of a pile, and even those too young to work spend much of the day breathing in toxic fumes.
The officials deny that there's child labor. Clearly it's obvious that there is, but whenever a camera or a security person or a policeman appears, then the children are chased away.
Ziki Swazi is 11 years old and agreed to meet us outside the mine.
Why aren't you in school?
My parents are dead, he said, and I stay with my grandma.
So you need to make money for your granny?
Yes.
We asked these companies whether child-mined cobalt is being used in their products. All acknowledge problems with the supply chain, but say they require their suppliers to follow responsible sourcing guidelines. Apple said it leads the industry in supply chain standards and last year cut ties with the largest artisanal cobalt supplier. Microsoft told us it does not tolerate child labor and that they are working with NGOs to eliminate it. Samsung said it's mapping its supply chain, and Tesla explained it performs audits and has very little cobalt in its batteries. But our investigation shows just how complicated it is to trace child-mined cobalt in the global supply chain. We followed the mineral as it left the mines, piled high on every mode of transport available. Sacks were already mixed up without labels, making it impossible to know who had mined them.
The children's cobalt is brought here to this market, where it is bought by a Chinese company for extremely low prices.
We wanted to see whether there was any attempt to check if the cobalt had been mined by children. So our team went back later with a hidden camera. When we offered to sell a truckload of cobalt, nobody asked us who mined the mineral, only what the quality was. This man told us that the Chinese traders here bought all the cobalt and sold it mainly to one Chinese company, Congo Dongfang Mining, known locally as CDM. CDM is owned by global Chinese giant Huayu, but Huayu said they stopped buying from that market last year and have put in place a detailed program to eliminate child labor from their supply chain. And yet, in this murky process of sourcing cobalt, one thing is clear: children are still here, carrying the weight of our high-tech world on their shoulders.
Now, did you catch that? Did you catch how they did this news piece? The obvious, yes, you have all these little children digging for cobalt, which is wrong. Where's the grown men to go dig for that if that's what they're going to do? But child labor is things that happen in many other countries outside the United States of America. But outside of all what we saw that's horrible, notice that they showed the Chinese going in there and allowed to pass through. They showed the Chinese buying cobalt at literally pennies on the dollar, even though these children are working all day to get the cobalt. Notice they didn't show no white people buying the cobalt. Microsoft isn't a Chinese company. Apple isn't a Chinese company. Tesla isn't a Chinese company. Where were the white folks that was getting all the cobalt? See, this is the thing. They take issue with Chinese doing the exact same things that they're doing. Now, the Chinese didn't go in there and kill them all and imprison them and rape them and took all their land from them. Yeah, they exploiting them too. Oh yeah, the Chinese exploiting them. But all of a sudden the Chinese is the ones that's exploiting everybody. See, I already see the play with the mainstream media in China. I'm not for anybody exploiting the continent, but they are angry. They are bothered about Chinese being in Africa. They feel this is our place to exploit. Now let's get to the people in the Congo. See, I believe in my heart that African Americans are the key to making the continent great. The reason why I say that is this. Some people on the continent, all they know is being exploited and colonized. That's all they know. And if we as African Americans could come in and help them say, wait a minute, hold on, stop that. Do you know you hold the world in your hands when it comes to cell phones, when it comes to tablets, laptops? They need this to have this all over the world. So the first thing you're going to do is make them pay you what it's worth. That's first and foremost. That's how the money is going to be made to make this place no different than America. Then you're going to start taking it for yourself, that resource, and you're going to start developing companies that's going to make cell phones, that's going to make laptops, etc., coming out of the Democratic Republic of the Congo. Everything is there for you to make it. And I guarantee you they'll be pissed off, but there's no reason for them to be living like that when they have all those resources there. See, that's why I say, brothers and sisters from America, if we go over there and really get them turned up and show them how they being exploited and show them how they should be trillionaires off of their resources and actually get the Chinese and the rest of them to pay them what it's really worth, then you will see African nations turn around. But how would they know unless we kind of point that out to them? And of course, everywhere we go, we got shucking and jiving Sambos and coons, even over there, taking advantage of the people. Just as much as Quanell X has been exposed, they got to be exposed too. And I believe we are the key to doing that because we as African Americans know the system. We know what we're dealing with. We know the colonizer. So we need to go teach them that so they can actually take advantage and make the continent of Africa great again. That's just really what needs to happen. But CBS, they tried to act like they're noble with this report. Nah, I saw right through that. He was blaming the Chinese for everything and didn't show no white folks buying nothing. Think you're slick, but I'm on to you. Leave me a comment. Let me know what you think about this because it's time for Africa to become great. It's time for them to benefit from their own resources and to demand people to pay them what those resources are actually worth.